All right, ladies and gentlemen around the Delaware Valley, welcome to Top Lawyer with Sean Quinn. We've got an awesome show today, an impacting show. Listen, if you are somebody who takes Uber or Lyft, okay, like we all do, okay, and I just had to take a family member to the hospital in an Uber because of a transportation issue, okay, you need to be listening to this, and you need to get proactive. And you gotta, take notes, man. It's going to be an incredible show. I want to bring in our host, Sean Quinn. Sean, how are you, my friend?
I am well, Joe. Like you, I am now the parent of a high school graduate. So it's been a whirlwind over in Casa de Quinn.
Awesome.
But yeah, listen, when we get to different seasons of our lives, right? I've liked to talk about those things in terms of, we all go through phases when our kids are little, and I'm at that season now where my kid will be going off to St. Joe's in the fall to start college, and suddenly I became old like you. So at least those are things that we both have in common now, buddy.
Well, I'll tell you what we got in common, and it does go incredibly fast. Congratulations, and to your son and the family on the job.
Appreciate that.
Very interesting. You talk about having something in common, of course. So my younger sister, my little sister, is a freshman at St. Joe's right now.
Oh, nice.
My dad was remarried.
Yeah.
And so she'll be a sophomore when he's a freshman. So we'll introduce them. And so
you'll have to give me the tell her to look out for them.
Oh, she will. She's a
yeah.
good girl.
So listen, today's going to be an interesting show. I mean, obviously, for those that have watched our shows before, we typically have a third guest. Somebody else that we are interviewing. But there's so much stuff happening. Right now, not only in our own lives, but in terms of legislatively and things that folks need to, that we decided, hey, we are going to abandon the script this show, because there are things that we can't wait another month when we get together again.
Well, and Sean, so you understand what I do the labor show. So legislatively, we're always trying to get our communities to get proactive and mobilized. And let me just, I'll hand you the ball just like this. You and you wrote two incredibly passionate articles on LinkedIn. Okay. Now I know you might want to talk about some other stuff before this.
Oh yeah, no, we can jump right into it too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So talk about those articles, because the first article, when you talk about that, a very strong, situation, combines personal injury insurance coverage, obviously consumer protection, legislative policy, and corporate influence. Okay. Yeah. What's going on? Okay. With Uber and Lyft running a coordinated legislative campaign to strip the rights of their passengers across the country is absolutely unforgivable. And then you're going to get in. We'll just go right there, and then we'll get into the other article when we're done talking about this. But we absolutely need the full hour for this.
Yeah, this is something that applies to all of us, not just one segment of the population, not just folks in Philly, Jersey, New York. It's nationwide, it's worldwide, and it is a coordinated attack on our rights. So I can't be any more plain about it. Listen, I think people have become desensitized to some extent for corporates trying to screw us over, right? We're used to that to some extent.
Yeah.
What has really changed in say the past 15 to 20 years is the way in which politicians are being bought, and the way in which PAC dollars are shadily influencing through lobbyists access to politicians. And listen, this is not a one side of the aisle issue. This is Democrats being bought. This is Republicans being bought. This is, for a long time, it was always, big pharma that we blamed, or the big insurance companies that we blamed. Now we have big rideshare. We got Uber and Lyft. And listen, they're doing it through shady PACs and donations to these companies, and they're affecting every state house in the country, from DC on a national level to Trenton in Jersey to Harrisburg in Pennsylvania to Albany in New York to Sacramento in California. It is a coordinated attack on the civil justice system. But how they're packaging it is that it's going to be savings for the consumer. We need to reel in wacky insurance, aberrational big verdicts and
right.
That are,
Sean, it's no different than insurance. In other words, when we're watching the ball game, right? It's always about saving your money. If they don't tell you what you're being gutted of, your loved ones, you think you got a safety net, you don't.
Oh no! I mean, listen. Pennsylvanians have been getting screwed for longer than most of these states. And we're going to go into that in a moment. But, I think folks take for granted that when you go on your Uber app or your Lyft app and you get into a car, and God forbid you get into a car crash, you would think that Uber and Lyft, big corporation, would have insurance and have adequate insurance. I would take a gander that most people have no idea how much coverage is actually afforded to them if they got into a car crash. And listen, when you're in an Uber or Lyft, it can never be your fault. You're a passenger, right? You are if they're involved in a car crash or something crazy, even worse, where we have a whole cottage industry of sexual assault cases involving Uber drivers, but we're going to deal with that in a second because that's the first big point of this. But the point is, most people just don't know. They don't know when they're signing up in an app that they're giving away rights, that they're agreeing to all these terms and conditions in the app, and Uber is going to absolutely hurt them in the end by what they've agreed to. So, one of the things that people often mistake is there are 4 billion rideshare trips every year in the US. 4 billion with a B. They're not taxi companies. These are built as tech platforms to connect you to drivers. Okay. In the old days, when you and I first started taking our version of rideshare in the city, it was just taxis.
It was a cab, right?
It was cabs. And those cabs have medallions, and they were required to have a minimum level of insurance. Now, the minimums for decades have been mired at $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident, but it was something, right? And it was garbage. It hadn't been adjusted. And people are like, so what you're telling me is I could get into a cab and get killed and only my life is only worth 15 grand. Yeah. The legislature said that's what it's worth. And when Uber and Lyft, came to the equation, there was the presumption that, these are big corporations. They're going to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of coverage to protect folks. And that's what they sold. They really sold it when they were coming into these different states across the country as, we are going to provide a safer platform, a better platform, better vehicles, newer vehicles. And what we realize is the gamesmanship and the shell game started really early on. The first thing that they did was try to classify every driver as an independent contractor. Right now, and we see this obviously in the construction accidents and the trucking accidents as well. But they try to classify everyone as to avoid holding the corporation accountable. They try to classify everybody as an independent contractor. We have no control over who these drivers are, but we know it's a lie. The evidence suggests that they have a lot of control over how fast they drive, where they're driving, their driving background. They do background checks allegedly. So all of these things. Uber has deliberately set up a game to protect themselves and make themselves untouchable in the event that one of their drivers is a bad driver, bad guy, bad person. It's an independent contractor. We have no control. So that was the first part of the shell game. Okay. And they've been doing this for years, and good lawyers, and this is shout out to my brethren, is that we've been doing the work to hold them accountable, right? Hold them, get them classified correctly. These people aren't independent contractors. And listen, like the drivers are getting screwed too, because when you think about it, like
no insurance coverage, personally, health coverage.
And well, not only that, think of it in this way, Joe. If one of our construction workers that we represent gets hurt on the job, what do they have? They got workers' comp, right? They got something to pay their bills and give them some level of wage payments while they're out of work because they got hurt doing the work for a big business. By screwing these people over, the drivers, I'm going to talk to them right now. By trying to classify them as independent contractors, what do? They tried to avoid complying with workers' comp laws in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all these states around the country to try to say, oh, we don't have to provide workers' comp because you're an independent contractor under the law. It's all these ways that they have built a statutory and regulatory scheme to screw over drivers and riders every day of the week and twice on Sundays. This is the Uber playbook. And, one of the things we're going to ask at the end is, I'm going to tell people, and as much as painful it is, delete the app. Like, I know it's not always practicable, okay? But that app, and it's kind of like, when we put pressure on media companies and things like that by deactivating things, cut the cord, cut them off, all those things. So
also, call your
oh yeah, well, congressmen and stuff like that.
Right.
But there's some things that I think, one of the things that I think is the most egregious and things that we're seeing with the platform. And I want to talk about what happened 10 days ago in DC. Okay. So there are roughly 3,000 active sexual assault cases going actively in court, in American courts, against Uber for cases where passengers were sexually assaulted by drivers, folks that were apparently not adequately investigated by Uber, background checks, all of the things you would expect. Because as a consumer, I don't get to choose my driver. They assign it, okay? I don't get to individually look at what their background is. I don't get to vet them, okay? You're just randomly assigned, and you have to make the assumption and the presumption that Uber did its job, okay? That Uber went ahead and made sure that this person is not some guy that's, or gal that's going to hurt you. A predator, somebody, because think about it, like what better job is there for somebody who is a sociopath and predator than signing up for Uber? Like, it's literally shooting fish in a barrel. And so there are about 3,000 active lawsuits. And we've started within the past year, had lawsuits, what they call bellwether trials, where these first of these cases are starting to come to court. And Uber is being held accountable. Now, some of them have been awarded significant funds, sums of money. Some of the cases have been won against Uber, but just didn't award a ton of money to those sexual assault victims. But the point is this: jurors, courthouses across America are telling Uber that the jig is up. Okay, you are somebody who is, controlling these folks, responsible for the negligent hiring of these folks, the negligent retention of these folks, whether they're a bad driver or a bad apple who is looking to prey on somebody. And juror court after court is holding them to say, yeah, these folks are not independent contractors. These folks are essentially your employees, and we are going to hold you accountable. So what does Uber do, in that situation? Well, they go to their favorite local politician who is willing to be bought off, and they say, here is what we need you to do. Here is the language of the bill that we need you to write, and we're going to pay you handsomely. Of course, not directly, but it's a donation to your campaign, either directly or through some shady underground gray PAC money. And we're going to make sure that's done. So on May 22nd, right before the Memorial Day weekend, at 2 a.m., while America was asleep, okay, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is controlled by the Republicans because they own and have control of all three branches at this point, voted on an amendment to the Build America 250 Act. So that's a big bill that is being pushed through Congress right now, and they put an amendment in it. And it was sponsored by none other than Vince Fong of California. He's a Republican congressman. And it would give Uber and Lyft near total federal immunity from lawsuits by passengers that are injured directly by their drivers. Okay, so hear that again. If you are sexually assaulted by your driver, okay, and there are 3,000 people that have stepped forward, put their name on the line, and filed lawsuits despite fear of embarrassment, fear of being, have their name dragged through the mud.
Well,
This would bar those lawsuits. Currently active lawsuits would be subject to a different standard. A different standard is almost saying Uber would have had to have acted criminally or grossly negligent. Those are terms of art, but they're near impossible standards. It would essentially eliminate holding Uber accountable for every woman who has been raped and sexually assaulted by a driver.
And when you talk about getting active, some person might say, "Well, you just in passing, I don't take Uber." Well, your kids might, your daughter.
Oh yeah,
might.
I mean, listen, somebody you care about takes Uber, right?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody that even if it's not you, your mother, your grandmother, your uncle, somebody a friend
is going to need to take it once or twice.
Well, that's like the old adage of like all these folks that we meet in our lives. They're like, "Oh, I'm not political. Like I don't get involved in politics." Okay, well, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, buddy.
100%.
If you don't have a seat at the table, you are absolutely going to get crushed.
Yeah.
So for all those that tell me that I'm not interested in politics and I don't really understand this stuff, it affects your daily life. And Uber and Lyft know that you're not paying attention. And that's why they do this through the Vince Fongs of the world and politicians on local levels, and because they know that people aren't going to do the work. They aren't going to look beyond the Wizard of Oz and see who's really back there.
Yeah.
Okay? Who is really pulling the strings. But think about this on a basic level. If someone is murdered or assaulted by a driver, this is essentially giving blanket immunity to Uber and Lyft and all these other rideshare companies for allowing these folks. Now, listen, maybe Uber doesn't have cause to know that this person is a bad apple. That's what evidence is for. That's what doing the work is for. But a lot of these folks that we're seeing in these cases should never have been hired, or they get complaints against them and they continue to allow them to continue to drive people despite problems with them on prior occasions. Okay, so it's a negligent hiring, and then after that, it's a negligent retention, keeping them on in their database despite knowing that they're a problem driver. It'd be the same of, if Joe, you get into a car and we've all been in one of those Ubers where the person just drives like a bat out of Haiti, right? They're flying, they're doing California stops, no stops at stop signs. And you sit there and go, I'm going to pray that I get to my destination alive. We've all been in that Uber. We've all been in that person, okay? And I could guarantee that that's not their first rodeo, buddy. That's not their first time that they drove that way. And Uber knows this. You know how they know this? Because they monitor their speed. They monitor their driving patterns. And when they continually turn the blind eye because they need drivers and put us all at risk. So put it aside from the criminal context, just bad driving. Uber has the ability to check somebody's driving record before they got hired and then continually to check it and monitor, because they are tracking the data. They are making sure that all this stuff is happening. But you know what they are doing? They're turning a blind eye because that person is profitable. Okay. So they put profits over people every day of the week. And again, twice on Sunday. But this amendment to this bill that was snuck into the Build America Act is essentially a death sentence to every negligent hiring and negligent retention claim against Uber. It would give them not only um, immunity for cases from the date that that bill is signed. Where this gets even more egregious is it has retroactive application, meaning even though and by the way, this law has not yet been passed. It came out of committee. It will go to the full House for vote at some point. But they jumped out of town to avoid voting on the War Powers Act.
So what's odd is, and I'm not saying that special interests don't play both sides of the aisle, but when you have a strong lobby and people on both sides of the aisle,
yep.
It's very difficult. And by the way, I'm not sure if you're seeing our chat. First of all, I'm going to ID the show. You're listening to Top Lawyer with Sean Quinn here on WWDB Talk 860. Passionate discussion about legislative efforts by Uber and Lyft to basically get rid of any liability and any rights that passengers have. You think that you're protected because it's a big corporation. You're not. I'm going to read you something, and we're talking about 3,000 plus cases of filed of rape from Uber drivers because their drivers were not vetted. Okay, now TJ, our producer, just said, I've had a bad experience on Uber. He's got this. I don't know if you're looking at the chat, Sean.
Yeah, I can see it.
And he said, my driver missed the exit on 76 and backed up on the highway.
Oh, my God.
That's like suicide.
Listen, driving straight on 76 has its own problems. Going backwards is literally almost a death sentence.
I mean, and so you're looking, and by the way, that individual in my family that took Uber to go to the hospital in an emergency did say they were driving incredibly fast.
Yeah, and listen, this is not to besmirch every Uber driver.
Of course not.
I've had some great Uber drivers, some of the nicest people in the world, and they need protection too.
Yeah,
they need protection too. And one of the things, and this is something that I think even Uber drivers don't know, is, Uber's not just about screwing over the passenger. They're also about screwing over their own driver.
Well, you just mentioned it, though. If somebody T-bones an Uber driver, they don't get workers' comp.
No, so they don't get workers' comp. It gets worse, though, Joe. It gets worse. Pennsylvania. So if folks kind of can take themselves out of like the Uber talk for 1 second, when you have a car insurance policy, okay, you have series of different coverages on that policy. Bodily injury liability protects you if you get sued, from somebody else for causing an injury. So if you rear end somebody in your car, Joe, and you have, Geico or one of these companies, whatever that bodily injury liability amount is the most that insurance company will pay for the injuries you cause to somebody else. But the thing that a little further down on that policy language is uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, yep. UM and UIM coverage. And what that does is, same scenario. If you get reverse that situation now, Joe, where you get rear-ended by Joe, such and such, if he doesn't have insurance, if you have uninsured motorist coverage with your own company, you can somehow get some money and be made whole. By the way, it's a premium you pay for. Okay. Right. It's something you're paying your insurance company to protect you in the event that driver has no insurance. Now, say they have one of those horrible 1530 policies, that 15,000 in coverage, and Joe, you're seriously hurt from that accident, and 15 grand ain't going to cover it. Underinsured motorist coverage in the event that driver is classically underinsured, meaning they don't have enough insurance to cover it. So think of it in your own context, right? You're paying for that coverage. And listen, some people waive it. Some people reject it because they have either bad agents or they're working with one of these big, massive companies like Progressive and State Farm and Geico. And listen, that little lizard, he ain't here to help you. Okay, those good hands people, they're not good. They have no good hands. They are there to hurt you and protect their corporate bottom line. But when you move that equation now, that same concept of uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage over to Lyft and Uber, it gets vastly worse because the folks that are Uber drivers don't get to choose how much coverage Uber is paying for their trip. And you know how much Uber is actually giving for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage in Pennsylvania? Zero. Goose egg. Nada. They have waived it. The Pennsylvania Insurance Department approved a reduction many years ago now, within the last decade, approved allowing Uber and Lyft to waive uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. So that means if you are a passenger, Joe, in an Uber, and the driver did nothing wrong, he got rear-ended by one of the possibly 30 to 40% of people driving in this town with either too little or no insurance. Do you know how much insurance coverage you have access to? Nothing.
Sean, let me just say something. And I think you realize this. But aside from our broadcasts, okay, the advocacy on those issues and
doesn't exist.
Non-existent. Now you have constant insurance companies promoting, like you said earlier, the rates, okay? But the only advocacy that goes on media is what we do, okay? And educate people that way. I've thought about this many times with a nonprofit that we have, doing a commercial campaign, a PSA campaign, educating people on, and I believe it when I thought about it, I'm saying on major, I wonder if you could even do it on major, stations and programming, because we're so swamped. There's not a ball. You are one of the great baseball fans ever. Okay. How often have we seen on there these? I remember my wife, she'll tell you, I'm watching the games over the years since I started doing radio with you, and all of a sudden she sees Kyle Schwarber sitting there talking about it. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah, for the cure.
Right. But the point is, it's better to get a good rate than it is to go to the World Series. I mean, that's not exactly what it says.
Yeah, I know.
But what I'm saying is, and she sees me getting ticked off, right?
Oh yeah.
And or the Rogers rate or any of those. I bet you most of those guys have no idea what they're actually advocating for, and they are advocating. They just don't know it.
Yeah. Listen, when you put your name, face, and likeness associated with a product,
oh yeah,
listen, I think you have a moral obligation to figure out what they're all about.
100%.
But I think the reality, Joe, is this stuff isn't exciting, right? They're talking insurance. I know this is where most of our listeners turn off. I get it, and I hope that when they see me passionately talking about this and trying to break it down in plain English of how this affects you and giving them real world examples of the way this hurts you. So if you're getting in a car, like if I'm taking an Uber because I don't feel like parking at City Hall and I need to go to court, okay, I take an Uber on my way over there and it's somebody else's fault. If I'm somebody who lives in the city, maybe I don't have a car. I don't have a household policy with underinsured and uninsured motorists. And that's most people that take Ubers and Lyfts in the first place, is that they don't have a car or they're trying to get someplace safely. And now a person who rear ends a car, totals them, you could have, neck surgery, back surgery, and you can recover nothing. And people come to me and say, Sean, that's unfair. Yes, it is unfair. But, the ire needs to be at these insurance companies. It needs to be at Uber and Lyft for gaming the system. And frankly, we need to hold our legislators accountable.
Yeah, and I wonder in so many cases, if our legislators, one of the main issues with politics in general is you either are for or you're against. And human nature is we're all in the middle of something, right? In other words, in the middle. You can't get the money though. If you're not all in. And right. I wonder sometimes on a lot of issues, in certain areas, the politicians even understand what they're voting on, and does it really matter? Because, that PAC fund you mentioned.
Oh yeah, it's
Super PAC.
People, listen, I think most people, as sad as it is, it's human nature not to care until it affects you, right? A lot of people are like, I don't care what's happening with this or that. It doesn't affect me until it does. And it's always the people that were the loudest voices, by the way. They're like, screw the, I don't care about that issue. I don't care about that person until it affects their family. Okay.
Exactly.
Until that injustice is brought into their house. So the key is, listen, have a little empathy, people. Have a little understanding. And because it could happen to you someday. It might happen to you someday. And at some point, it's going to affect somebody you love. At some point, and you're going to be the one whining about the injustice. But we have to take action with these things.
Well, what I love about what you guys do, and I'm a labor guy, you know that. And what labor does is we advocate on every day where there's legislation, right? And
they're kitchen table issues. Protecting workers
and workers' benefits, rights, safety standards. So we're constantly. It's a big part of what we do. The main saying that I hear on a daily basis is something Sean Quinn just said. If you're not involved, okay, if you're not
at the table, you're on the menu.
You're on the menu, and so. And we advocate on behalf of our young apprentices so they understand they weren't born on third base, and that when you're voting, you must vote for the issues that are impacting you. What I love about the trial lawyers like yourself, you're doing the same thing for people that don't even know they're going to get hurt, okay?
Yep.
So that when they do go to exercise rights, there's actually rights to be there. So this is a very...
Oh, it's really important. And Joe, on that, like people often think, and just to get back to that UIM and the uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, people have to keep in mind what that's for. The folks that get paid that insurance coverage are innocent victims. Okay. And when they don't get fully compensated for what they've been through, their medical expenses, their pain and suffering, who do you think takes and shares that pain? That's all of us through our tax dollars, unpaid medical bills that go to state insurance. So you are affected whether you're in that car or not. And Pennsylvania, listen, hopefully there's going to be some legislators with some, interest in protecting the consumer at some point. We have a Democratic governor. I would love to see this, be part of the equation. I don't know that the political climate allow it, but what's happening across the country is really damning. In California, earlier this year, through the efforts of Uber and Lyft, they had state mandated UM and UIM coverage of $1 million in that state. Guess it's 60. It's now through the efforts of, they've killed it. It's down to 60,000 per person. Okay. Yeah. That's a 94% reduction. Now, what we haven't seen is those insurance rates go down. That's the promise. They're like, well, if we cut these things, it's going to reduce our insurance rates. It's just not happening. They're cutting protection, but not insurance. It's a win and a windfall for these rideshare companies. New York, Uber went all in to launch these tort reform efforts in New York. And Governor Hochul, listen, she might be a Democrat, but she's not a friend of the people in what she just did. And I think the Uber CEO personally donated to her campaign just under 50 grand. Shocking that they got what they paid for by her signing that bill.
By the way, they got off cheap.
Oh yeah,
she sold her soul.
But what they did was their super PAC called Citizens for Affordable Rates. That's how they packaged it. Citizens for Affordable Rates. They donated $8 million into that super PAC. Okay. And that PAC is run by Uber's own lobbying firm. So what they did was they bought all the politicians who gave her the bill and then 50 grand for your Governor Hochul to sign the bill.
Well, when you have a super PAC, though, there's no accountability, right? You don't know who's
zero.
Right.
We don't. It's all shady. It's all shady.
They call it dark money, right?
So the one that's still in play right now is a state that's near and dear to me because I live there. I live in South Jersey, and New Jersey is right now has some of the best protection for consumers out there. We have state mandated 1.5 million in UM and UIM coverage to cover rideshare vehicles. What do you think Uber's doing? Oh, of course, they're sponsoring a bill through some shady politicians to cut it all the way down to 35 grand, a 97% reduction. So you could get in a horrible car accident, have a brain injury, could never work the rest of your life. But according to Uber's world and some Democrat and Republican politicians, 35G is enough. It's okay for some alleged savings on your insurance rates but 35 grand is going to protect you. And the reality is UM and UIM in New Jersey is already a problem, okay? Because New Jersey, UIM is set up differently than it is in Pennsylvania. So 35 grand doesn't go very far. Okay, let's just put it that way. One hospital visit can run you 35 grand, and you end up holding the bag. And the only one that profits through this, the only one that benefits from this is Uber and Lyft and the insurance companies that represent them and the lobbyists who have taken their PAC money. It's a national pattern. We're seeing these lobbyists through these shadow PACs happening in Nevada, Minnesota, Colorado, Oregon, Georgia. This is every state house in America where they haven't already killed your rights. Ubers, Lyfts, big insurance are all doing it. They're fighting in legislatures, and they're quietly burying your rights in their terms of service.
And it goes for their own, their own drivers who.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if
they don't even care about them.
Yeah, I mean, literally speaking, you're in a situation where, like we said, somebody gets T-boned, or they're on, they're.
Yeah. The other thing too, that in addition to trying to classify their drivers as independent contractors, they tried to bury arbitration clauses in their terms of service. So what that means to people is, people are like, well, isn't that a good idea to go to arbitration? No, you want a juror, people of your peers. We have a foundational right to a jury trial in this country, guaranteed in the United States Constitution. Okay, companies like Uber and Lyft try to bury in their terms of service mandatory arbitration clauses because they don't want you to get in front of a jury, because they know what's going to happen in front of a jury when people are on to their shenanigans and the things that they've done to try to harm the consumer. All right. It's a 1-2 punch that they're trying to do. They're going to try to bury it in their terms of service, and then when they can't win that way, they're going to pay off politicians to do it another way. The whole thing is to do one thing only, though, is to lock the courthouse doors.
And Sean, I'd like to, on that note, talk a little bit more about the sexual assault area, because you wrote 2 scathing articles, and man, were they informative but also passionate. When I'd like to paint a scenario, if you would, just so for I have done some shows on civil sexual assault and didn't really realize at the beginning what they're about, because I was always like, well, who's getting sued? The sexual assault? The sexual predator may be going to jail, hopefully, for 1,000 years. However, often it's the school that hired the predator that didn't do a background check, that put children in harm's way.
Yeah, the apartment complex that hired a maintenance man who's got a rap sheet longer than the mop that he.
That's right. And so now you have an accountability situation. If you don't hold corporations or entities, and there's a lot of good companies out there, we're not saying that, but if you don't hold every one of them accountable, there's nothing to lose and no standards. And the only thing that creates change is the courtroom. They have to be accountable to something, or that 3,000 person list of assault victims will skyrocket. And like Sean said, your child or your spouse or whoever or somebody you love will be on that list. So when you talk about, let's talk about in that particular area. First of all, how do they get away with it? Like in other words, and I'm wondering how some dude who's on it, like he's driving and I'm not saying, I know you're not in the middle of a case and you may not be intimately involved in this situation, but I'm wondering how this is how bad it must be if somebody's driving a car and he's driving a Lyft and there's still sexual assault and does Lyft or Uber even know who the hell they are? Can they easily get around that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Joe, because some of them are folks that were hired by Lyft, right? Some of them are folks that were hired by Uber. Sometimes their car is stolen and they log into the app, or their phone is stolen. And it's a person that they don't know, or it's their brother or their cousin who is in the car driving on their behalf, and they were never gone through a background check.
Because they probably couldn't.
They probably could never pass it. And so, it happens in a lot of different ways that the person in that driver's seat, but think about how cars are made nowadays, Joe. You could put child safety locks on all those cars. So you could be in the back seat and locked in. You're literally your prey is just waiting to pounce. They can close your windows. They can put, all the different things and drive you to a secluded area and take full advantage of the person. It's horrible. We've seen murders. We have seen sexual assaults. Crime by drivers is a real problem in America, whether people want to admit it or not. And yes, and you might be, people's natural reaction is, yeah, these folks should be criminally prosecuted, and they should. Okay. But you can't criminally prosecute Uber and Lyft for the hiring of these folks and the retention of these folks, despite providing access to their system and their platform. And Uber could easily put in different checks, Face ID, for example, on their phones to make sure that the person that they hired is actually the person that's using the phone. Okay. Biometrics and different things that they can use to make it safer. Put panic buttons and in the app so that if somebody feels unsafe, they could quickly hit panic, that the ride is going the wrong direction. All these things, are they like to claim that they're for the safety of the passenger, but we know that is just lip service. Okay. It is not. It's not designed to protect the consumer, protect the passenger. It's to protect their bottom line and their corporate shareholders.
You know that, right? Okay. Profits over clients.
Profits over people every day.
Right.
Yep.
So, it reminds me of the big corporations like Johnson and Johnson, when all they need to do is put a disclaimer on that this product has caused A, B, C, and D.
Yep.
They got hundreds of thousands of lawsuits on mesh and your baby powder and all that with the asbestos, and they still don't do it.
No.
Like, that's how big they are. They don't give a crap.
Well, listen, I mean, not to pat trial lawyers on the back, because a lot of my friends and contemporaries have really long arms and can do it themselves. But I'm just gonna say, listen, we have safer cars in America because of the work we do as lawyers. Ford Pinto would still have cars exploding, if it wasn't for the work that lawyers did to make vehicles safer, to make products for our babies safer, for holding people accountable. So yeah, listen. We get looked at as sometimes that, we're just ambulance chasers.
Let me just say, yeah, right. It's a joke. That's because to tell you what the insurance companies do. They do a great job at controlling the narrative with all that money and painting
propaganda.
That. Right. Let me say this. How much do you charge? Because Sean, you're one of the most successful attorneys in the Delaware Valley. So if I'm going to retain you, I must have to pay you $1,000 an hour, right?
I listen, Joe. I don't get paid that way. I get paid on the contingency fee agreement. So my services are contingent upon me winning. Okay.
So there's no out-of-pocket costs.
There's never an out-of-pocket cost. If somebody feels that they've been harmed due to an unsafe product, an unsafe work site, a dangerous Uber ride, they should reach out. Okay, there's no cost to talk. There's no cost to retain our firm, to investigate a claim. And listen, one of the things that I believe in, Joe, is straight talk. Okay, it's one of our core values in my law firm. If you have a case and I think I can help you, I will. Okay, if I don't think you have a case and I think that there's, listen, sometimes bad outcomes happen without negligence, without responsibility. Happens all the time in the medical malpractice setting,
Right.
where just because a bad outcome happens doesn't mean there was actual malpractice or medical negligence or whatever the issue might be. Sometimes just bad things happen. But if somebody was responsible for that bad thing happening and we think we can help you, we will. If it's not in our wheelhouse, but we think one of our partner firms, somebody that we've referred business to, we will set you up. And the key is with all of our firms, you don't pay us anything up front. You don't front any of the expenses to pursue the case. We only get paid if we win, and we take a percentage of the recovery for that. So listen, you get high priced talent for no cost up front. And if we listen, pursue a case for a year and then we find out some facts that change the analysis or we can't support it, we might have spent thousands of dollars of our own money, hours upon hours of our time, and tell you owe us nothing. Okay? Because we didn't recover anything on your behalf. And we will always be straight with our clients. We give them a complete breakdown of everything we're doing. It's just really, I like to think that in every case, it's a David versus Goliath matchup. And I'm the slingshot, and I'm going to take them down. So my clients are up against Goliaths of the world, of these big insurance companies, the Ubers of the world. And we are the tool that levels the playing field.
And change happens in the courtroom.
It sure does.
I've given this analogy 100 times. If I've given it once, I've done it 100 times on the air. My next door neighbor's a contractor. Every morning, I don't have to worry about setting my alarm. His truck backs up and I hear beep, beep. I don't even know what case it was, but I know that's there because a lawyer changed because somebody was injured badly.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, we've heard countless stories of little kids getting run over. That's how we developed with rear cameras. It got beyond just the sensors. It got to those rear backing cameras and cars that now have automatic braking systems. So if somebody jams on their brakes in front of you, the car stops. Okay. We have automation. Listen, I'd like to think that we are, with technology, making the roads a safer place. We're not quite there yet, but maybe there's a day where we're just all driving in Waymos and there are no drivers to assault people, and they stop at every stop sign and and maybe we'll live in this utopian world where the Jetsons are just being,
here's an even more crazy example where somebody gets injured on the job and the work comp provider sends them to a good doctor.
Or they actually pay the claim and don't deny it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Listen, these are our unicorns, but I can assure us, Joe, you and I will both be dead before that happens.
Yeah. Sean, real quick though, and we only have 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I want you to explain to our listeners just a little bit about, remind them a little bit about the firm, what you do in regards to all the types of cases you represent.
Yeah, Joe, and this is important because I know we have only a few minutes, but I did an exercise. I'm part of a group that a mastermind group, and I hate that term because I think it's pretentious. But one of the things we did recently was we went to this event, and they asked us to do a homework assignment, and it said, "Give me your state of your firm, and do a state of the firm address for your team." And it got me really thinking about like what I do and where we came from and all the progress over the years. And I say 13 years ago, I started my team and my firm with a little bit of hard work, some contacts, but I didn't have systems. I didn't have a playbook. I didn't really have plans. I just knew how to work hard, serve clients, treat everyone well. And for a long time, that was enough. There was, we had a lot of success. But I was running a lifestyle firm. I mean, you and I have talked about it for years, where I was enjoying traveling around the country, coaching travel baseball, and I was really comfortable. I had a good life, and about 3 years ago, I stepped away from the baseball field and really went all in on building my firm out and having tough conversations and being honest with myself. And listen, we have a good reputation, and that is a product of a reputation I had when I came here, but also the hard work my team has and that puts in and does the work. And results weren't always linear, but they were necessary. And not every year is perfect. Every firm, whether they're a billboard firm or somebody that just is in the game, in the trenches, and doesn't market. Listen, we all have a life cycle of a firm has ebbs and flows, great years, bad years, but we're always trying to move forward. And my team here is 12 deep. I'm pretty proud that I can say without hesitation that here in 2026, I have the best team that I've ever had. Okay. I have a remarkable team of lawyers and paralegals and case managers and intake folks and people that are on the front lines that care about the mission. And the mission is to help injured folks. And my practice specifically, my firm deals with, car crashes and trucking crashes, these big rigs that are on the road, these Uber and Lyft cases. I spend most of my time working with my injured workers in big construction accident cases, falls on the job site. That's where I spend at this point in my career a lot of times doing, because Joe, those cases are huge. Catastrophic injuries in almost every one of them. Folks that are either dead or
and you would think they would be easy and not need a lawyer, and yet
their fights,
somebody
man.
loses somebody, somebody gets catastrophic injured, and they get worse pushback.
Yeah, listen, the stakes are high though, right? There's a lot of insurance in those cases, and the stakes are really high for these folks. So, I'd like to think that that's the kind of the backbone of my thing. But listen, we help clients in fall down cases and holding businesses accountable when they don't take care of their sidewalks and they let dangerous conditions, slip and falls happen on their works in their places of business. So yeah, we are a traditional personal injury and wrongful death firm. We deal with significant cases from Pittsburgh to Philly, and from Hackensack down to Cape May in Jersey. We cover it all. I even have cases where I am in New York City right now. So we listen, if somebody's tragically hurt from a dangerous product, whatever it might be, we're there to help them. And I truly mean that. And listen, I have some scars on the thing from the trials that I've tried over the years, and there's nothing that gives me more enjoyment though than helping somebody, like really truly helping them and righting wrongs. Because
and that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
And so having said that, because we're always before we roll it out, your contact information, Sean.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'm easy to find, right? You can hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Sean Quinn. You can, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you say you're a referral source or whatever, you can find our law firm at quinnlawyers.com. You can hit me up on the Instagram. We have Quinn Lawyers. TikTok, we have Quinn Lawyers. But we also, listen, you want to play around. I got Mighty Quinn 71 on the IG. But listen, from socials to our main things, and you can always call us anytime or email me. So yeah, pretty easy to get a hold of.
And having said that, we got about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And this has been an incredibly meaningful show. Having said that, it is a big summer in the city of Philadelphia.
It is.
You got about a minute, but I want
listen, by this time next month, hopefully our Phillies are 10 games over 500.
Right.
With 2, let's get to 10. That's next goal. We got to hit more than 4, score more than 4 runs a game.
It's been a month.
Dombrowski, you did great. And by this time, FIFA and the World Cup will be taking over Philly when we get together in early July. But this summer, between the 250th anniversary of America, World Cup, and the All-Star game, which I'm particularly jazzed about.
Oh, yeah.
In Philly. It's going to be a crazy summer here.
It's a great place to be, man. And certainly, we're proud of our city. Okay. But we want to keep everybody safe and we want to protect everybody. And that, while they're enjoying themselves. And by the way, how many people are going to be taking Lyft and Uber during
all the time? Like, listen, my advice to them is take the subway, take mass transit.
Absolutely. Listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Top Lawyer with Sean Quinn show. I want to thank our host, Sean Quinn, for an incredible show and a great, great information. Everybody, listen to the podcast. You can get it on www.dbam.com. And of course, go call your legislator and tell them, obviously, we have to protect our Uber drivers, our Uber passengers. On behalf of Sean Quinn, I'm Joe Doherty and everybody and all of our producers at the station. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Good show, Joe.
Why do some of the biggest names, from coaches to authors to athletes and executives, talk to the heart of sports?